Holmes, did Cain marry his sister? Why do you ask, Watson? Well, Holmes, it's more of a moral question, and these days it's a question of legality too, I suppose. To suppose is to have an element of uncertainty concerning a matter, is it not, dear fellow? I suppose you're right. I mean to say, yes, you're right, Holmes. Then you meant to say that marrying one's sister today would be an illegal undertaking, correct, Watson? Yes, indeed, Holmes. But we're discussing a matter that took place thousands of years ago when the world was beginning to be populated. Yes, quite so, Holmes. Then there are a few factors to consider in finding an answer to your question. What are those, Holmes? One factor would be to consider the condition of the human DNA at that time. Another factor would be to reflect on how God would consider such a union of a brother marrying a sister if, in fact, it was his sister. Oh, do you have another viewpoint, Holmes? I'll come to that in a moment, Watson. And another factor to consider would be, what other choice would there have been when Eve was the mother of all living? And what is your answer to these three factors, Holmes? When God created the Garden of Eden, he saw that all was good, and that would have included the DNA of Adam and Eve and all of their offspring, even after they had left the garden? Yes, Watson, it wasn't until after the flood that there was a more rapid decline in all things living. But still, wouldn't God have frowned upon Cain marrying his sister? By that time, it may have been a distant cousin that Cain married, Watson. Have you thought of that possibility? Perhaps, Holmes, but at some earlier time, someone must have married their sister if Adam and Eve were the original parents. There's nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact, Watson. Then why would God allow anyone to marry their sister, Holmes? Romans 4:15 holds the answer, Watson. Before any law, there was no sin. It wasn't until the decline of humanity and the human DNA did God need to introduce restrictive measures. And besides all this, Watson, back when God told Adam and Eve to be fruitful and replenish the earth, there would have been little option to accomplish that goal without marrying a close relative. So, Holmes, am I to understand that when Cain married his sister or cousin, the human DNA was much purer than it is now, and that such a union wasn't against any law or morality back then, including God's law, and that Cain had little option to choose from, that he would have had to marry a close relative? Once again, as I always say, Watson, when you have eliminated the impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Presented by the Jesus Explains channel on YouTube and Rumble. And endtimesofficial.com. That's endtimesofficial.com. The End Times Teaching Ministry, where Bible prophecy is made easy to understand.